say about us when it comes to our commitment to the truth? Proverbs 23 and verse 23.
Proverbs chapter 23, verse 23. Buy the truth and sell it not.
One more time.
Buy the truth and sell it not.
Go ahead.
Also wisdom and instruction and understanding.
So the Lord told us to buy the truth and sell it not. He told us to put everything, invest what you got into the truth. And don't get rid of it. Keep it. Hold on to it. So this nation, right, these immortals, quote unquote, were focused on the truth. That's what they were focused on. They said, hey, above everything, we need the truth. Hey, shalom, family. Most High in Christ bless. I'm Officer Jadiel out in San Diego. And to my right, I got
Officer Onias.
And to my left,
Officer Alicia.
Hattiesburg finest. All right, we're gonna jump into it, man. I've been looking at this Zerubbabel, right? And that's kind of what led me to the topic. But it also is a couple things that's been happening. So we'll jump into it, right? But the class title is the Real Immortals, right? So let's look at 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 1. Let's start there.
The book of 2 Peter, chapter 3 and verse 1.
Yep.
This second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you, and by which I stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance.
So Peter's intention was always to stir up the people's minds, right? On our day-to-day, we get slack, right? We forget what the Bible says. We forget what we're supposed to be doing. So when Peter wrote the letter to the people, he was trying to stir up their minds. That's what these classes are for, to get your mind to think, right, to meditate. That's why it's called mid-morning medicine, for you to get the medicine in your system, and then from there you can be healed, right? Read it again from the top.
This second epistle, beloved, I now write unto you, and by which I stir up your pure minds by way of remembrance, that ye may be mindful of the words which were spoken before by the holy prophets, and of the commandment of us, the apostles of the Lord and Savior, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts.
In these last days, everybody walk after their own lusts, right? Besides those that are following the Bible. Everybody says, do what you can, right? That's why that sister got locked up in Dubai. She got the ticket. She thought she was going to have a hot girl summer. She went out there. She walking after her own lusts. Keke Palmer walking after her own lusts. Basketball players walking after their own lusts, right? Football players, artists, rap artists, everybody walking after their own lusts. And the queen maker, damn. Everybody, right? Everybody is walking after their own lust. And that's what the Bible is to prevent you from doing, to show you how to walk after God. But we've been taught the wrong thing in the earth. So when the apostles came before the people and they sent them a letter, the goal was to get them to remember what was written, right? Read that.
Verse 4, and saying, where is the promise of his coming?
That's how many people think. Why you believe in that Bible, man? You going to the Sabbath? What you doing? Why you being so disciplined? Why you don't want to eat some of this pork? Why you can't hit the club with me no more? Because everybody walking after their own lust. And their thought is, God ain't coming back. You believe a man going to come out the sky? Go ahead.
For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation.
This is how people are thinking on a daily basis. People like getting up, hey, another day, another dollar. Let me go to work. Let me just go through the motions today. But the people that understand this Bible, your mind ain't supposed to work like that. Your mind is supposed to say, no, it's another day for me to get right, and it could be my last. This could be my last moment to get right. So when Peter taught the people, he wanted them to come out of that stupor, right? That dead state where they just went from place to place, from point A to point B, and acted as if nothing was going to happen. That's how many of our people are living in the earth. So that's what we're going to touch today, right? We're going to go into something that hopefully wakes your mind up, stir up your mind, right? Let's go to Ezra chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 1, right? We're going to look at Zerubbabel. Hold on, let me get it. He said, me too? Oh, man. All right, Ezra chapter 1. We're going to start at verse 1.
The book of Ezra, chapter 1 and verse 1. Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Okay, so this is talking about Cyrus the Great. This is about 539 BC, right? Read again from the top.
Now, in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia.
Yep.
That the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled. The Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah.
Okay, so it said, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus. Let's read Jeremiah chapter 25 and verse 12 real quick. Because it was prophesied that Cyrus was going to do this, right before we jump into this. Everything was written. So the people, when they thought to move and have certain actions, it was based upon the Bible, right? They understood what was going to happen based upon the Bible. Go ahead, read that.
The book of Jeremiah, chapter 25, verse 12. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, that I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, said the Lord.
So the punishment of Babylon was Cyrus conquering them. Read.
For their iniquity and the land of the Chaldeans, and will make it a perpetual desolations.
So that was the point there, right? Jeremiah prophesied that the kingdom would only rule for 70 years. So when we're reading in the book of Ezra, what he's telling you now is Persia is coming in and they've conquered Babylon. So let's read that again. Ezra chapter 1, and let's keep reading from there. Verse 2.
Ezra chapter 1 and verse 2. Thus says Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given me all the kingdoms of the earth, and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people?
You can find that prophecy in Isaiah 45, right? Just for time, we're going to keep going.
Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord God of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem.
So Cyrus understood who God was because what? He had read the prophecies of the Bible. And he said, God has sent you all back to Jerusalem, right, to rebuild his temple. He understood that. That was a part of the stipulation. Let's go to Isaiah really quick. I have it written down, but let's just touch it real quick. So I'm proving all things. Isaiah 45. We could just read verse 1.
Yes, sir. The book of Isaiah, chapter 45 and verse 1. Thus said the Lord to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I have holden, to subdue nations before him. And I will loose the loins of kings, to open before him the two-leaved gates, and the gates shall not be shut.
So what he said is Cyrus would rule the earth. Everyone's going to bring their riches unto Cyrus. We're going to jump to verse 13 for the point on building up the Lord's kingdom. So Cyrus was prophesied about here, right, in the time of Isaiah. So now Cyrus comes on the earth. He gets into power, and he's read Isaiah 45. So we're going to jump to verse 13, and it'll show you what the Lord told him to do. Go ahead.
Verse 13. I have raised him up in righteousness, and I will direct all his ways. He shall build my city, and he shall let go my captives, not for price nor reward, saith the Lord of hosts.
So this is what Cyrus read, and he followed the order, right? That's what Cyrus was doing. So now jump back to Ezra. Cyrus followed orders better than some of you Israelites. Go back.
The book of Ezra, chapter 1 and verse 4. And whosoever remaineth in any place where he sojourneth, let the men of his place help him with silver, and with gold, and with goods, and with beasts, beside the free will offering for the house of God that is in Jerusalem.
Go ahead.
Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all them whose spirit God had raised, to go up to build the house of the Lord which is in Jerusalem.
So then rose up the chief of Judah and Benjamin and the Levites, right? Let's go to 2 Chronicles 11 and 14 to say why. Long story short, what had happened was, right? That's how you start a story when you from Southern Kingdom, right? What had happened was, I don't know if the Northern Kingdom got the equivalent. I got to go find out. But when Southern Kingdom tell a story, what had happened was, right? Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they split and they became the Southern Kingdom, and the other 10 tribes became the Northern Kingdom. The Northern Kingdom had went off and they went into the land of Azariah, which is America today, and the Southern Kingdom, they were being called back, right? So not all the Northern Kingdom came back is the point here. Here's how you know who came back. Read that.
The book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 11 and verse 14. For the Levites left their suburbs and their possession, and came to Judah and Jerusalem.
So the Levites were dwelling with Judah and Jerusalem. This is prior to them being taken into the Babylonian captivity. Go ahead.
For Jeroboam and his sons had cast them off from executing the priest's office unto the Lord.
Yep.
And he ordained him priest for the high places, and for the devils, and for the calves which he had made.
So Jeroboam had set up wicked priests. So he had cast off the Levites, right? And then Judah, Benjamin, and Levi were together. So when we go back now and go to Ezra, and we read Ezra 1 and verse 5, this is all relevant, right, to what we're about to get to. Because Judah, Benjamin, and Levi are the three main people that are around Zerubbabel, right? We just setting the stage and understanding the setting. We understanding that now Cyrus is in power. The end of the Babylonian captivity is happening, right? And who he's amongst. Go ahead and read that now.
Ezra chapter 1 and verse 5. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all them whose spirit of God had raised, to go up to build the house of the Lord, which is in Jerusalem.
Read.
And all they that were about them strengthened their hands with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, and with beasts, and with precious things, beside all that was willingly offered. Also Cyrus the king brought forth the vessels of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought forth out of Jerusalem, and had put them in the house of his God.
So he took back everything that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the Lord and gave it back. That was what Cyrus was doing, right? He was helping to rebuild the Lord's temple. So everything that got taken out of the temple when we were conquered by Babylon was now sent back when we went to rebuild the temple. Go ahead.
Even those did Cyrus king of Persia bring forth by the hand of Mithridates, the treasurer, and numbered them unto Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah. And this is the number of them: 30 chargers of gold, 1,000 chargers of silver, 29 knives, 30 basins of gold, silver basins of a second sort, 410, and other vessels 1,000. All the vessels of gold and of silver were 5,400. All these did Sheshbazzar bring up with them of the captivity that were brought up from Babylon unto Jerusalem.
Okay, remember that name Sheshbazzar. We'll dig into it in a second, right? So let's go to Ezra chapter 2 now, and let's just read. Let's start at verse 1. Read 1 and 2.
Ezra chapter 2 and verse 1. Now these are the children of the province that went up out of the captivity, of those which had been carried away, whom Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon had carried away unto Babylon, and came again unto Jerusalem and Judah, every one unto his city, which came with Zerubbabel.
Which came with Zerubbabel. Remember that name. Go ahead.
Jeshua.
Jeshua was the priest, or Joshua. Go ahead.
Nehemiah.
Read.
Sariah. Reliah. Mordecai. Bilshan. Mispar. Bigvai. Rehum. Banah. The number of the men of the people of Israel.
So these men, right, jump back to chapter 1 and verse 5. So we're on the same page about who went back. Because we read something, and I'm sure everybody forgot the point. Ezra 1 and 5.
Ezra chapter 1 verse 5. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of
Chief. The word chief, right? It means the leaders, the prestigious men, the men with honor. So when you read the name Zerubbabel or Sheshbazzar, right? Jump back to even what it says about Sheshbazzar. It said he was what? Read verse 8.
Ezra chapter 1 verse 8. Even those did Cyrus king of Persia bring forth by the hand of Mithridates, the treasurer, and numbered them unto Sheshbazzar, the prince of Judah.
Sheshbazzar was a prince of Judah, meaning what? He was royalty, right? The whole nation of Israel is royalty, but meaning these were the esteemed men. These were the men that came out from princes that had high status. So those were the men that rose up and started to go back so that they could rebuild, right? These were the men with resources in Persia, the men with the honor, right, that to be able to go back, or with the resources to be able to go back. These are the men that started to rise up and say, we're going to make a change. We're not just going to sit on our behind and chill in Persia. We're going to go back and we're going to rebuild our nation. That's important when we think about what we're going to get into today, right? Because a lot of our honorable men, quote unquote, today, or men with riches or status, they're not rising up for the community at all. If they had the opportunity to go go to Turks and Caicos or build up the nation of Israel, they going to Turks and Caicos and they're going to stay there. They ain't coming back. So these are the things we got to think about when we think about the mindset of our forefathers. Let's go to 1 Ezra 6 and verse 18 now. Let's look at this. And I'm jumping, but I want to show you who is Sheshbazzar. Yes, sir. 1 Ezra 6 and verse 18.
The book of 1 Ezra chapter 6 and verse 18. And the holy vessels of gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar had carried away out of the house at Jerusalem, and had set them in his own temple. Those Cyrus the king brought forth again out of the temple at Babylon, and they were delivered to Zerubbabel and to Sanabassaris, the ruler.
So on the side in my Bible, right? I don't know if it's in your Bible. Do you have like an asterisk next to it? No, sir. Okay. In mine it says, or Zerubbabel, which is also Sennabassar, the ruler, right? So Sennabassar is just the Persian name of Zerubbabel. So everybody's on the same page now. So Zerubbabel is being referenced when we reach chapter 1, verses 8 and verses 11. And then when we jump down, it says his name again, that he came into the kingdom. Why? It's similar to what happened to Daniel. Let's go to Daniel chapter 1 so we're all on the same page, right? The same thing happened to Daniel. When Daniel went into the Babylonian captivity, certain things happened to him. And this, again, I'm just setting it up. When we talk about the immortals and the real immortals, why is this relevant, right? Daniel was a man who gained certain status. But there were certain things that he was taught, certain things that they made him do. Start at Daniel 1, I think it's like 6, yeah.
Daniel chapter 1 and verse 3. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children of whom was no blemish.
See, so he said, and the king spoke unto Ashpenaz, the master of his eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes. See, what the nations know is when we take a people and colonize them, we need to take the people that have status in their community and that are educated, and we need to indoctrinate them with what we want them to do. Same thing like in your schools, right? You have your gifted classes. The gifted classes, the AP classes, they have a different curriculum. They have a different level of teaching. They have a different level of expectation from them, from the teachers, right? They're indoctrinated a completely different way than a person who's in the bottom class. The person in the bottom class go to detention or they go to prison. The person in the top class gets indoctrinated. They go to the best schools. They get taught things that will benefit the society that is conquering them. So when we think about Zerubbabel or Sennabassar, what he was being taught from a youth was what? What they wanted to indoctrinate him with. Very important. Very important. We got to think about it. Go ahead.
Verse 4. Children in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, and cunning in knowledge, and understanding science, and such as ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans.
Yep.
And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat, and of the wine which he drank, so nourishing them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel.
See, similar thing, right? When the nations would conquer us, they would take the children of Judah, the high esteem, the princes of Judah, and then make them learn something else, right? That's why many of our men are destroyed, right? They're resourceful in the sense of like they know how to get money even though they're in bad situations, or many of them rise to top classes or learn a lot, but they take their minds and they destroy them so that they're not for their people. That's what they were trying to do to Daniel, right? Same thing they were trying to do to Zerubbabel. Go ahead.
Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belshazzar.
See, a different name. Go ahead.
And to Hananiah of Shadrach, and to Mishael of Meshach, and to Azariah of Abednego.
So I'm just showing that to show you what? When they took us into captivity, they changed our names. Deuteronomy 28 verse 37 shows you that. They would take us into captivity, change our names, and try to indoctrinate us, right? Now that new name that we got is associated with a whole bunch of different customs that don't relate back to being Israel. So let's read some more on Zerubbabel. Let's go back to 1 Ezra chapter 2 and verse 4. I'm just setting it up so you understand what he went through, because many of you that are online, you think your problems and your difficulties are so different from those individuals in the Bible. Sometimes we got to look at these people and compare them to what's going on today, so that we can really think about, like, did Zerubbabel live a different life than we lived? Is he going through something completely different where he was able to rise to the occasion or carry himself a certain way? Did he not deal with the same struggles? That's what we got to be able to look at when we read this Bible. We got to make it personal. So first Ezra chapter 2, and we're going to start at verse 4.
1 Ezra chapter 2 and verse 4. And commanded me to build him an house at Jerusalem and Jewry. If therefore there be any of you that are of his people, let the Lord, even his Lord, be with him.
So we're just rereading, right, what we read in the book of Ezra chapter 1 and then 2, right? The fact that they were going back and they were going to rebuild the kingdom. Go ahead.
And let him go up to Jerusalem that is in Judea.
Yep.
And build the house of the Lord of Israel. For he is the Lord that dwelleth in Jerusalem. Whosoever then dwell in the places about, let them help him. Those, I say, that are his neighbors, with gold and with silver, with gifts, with horses and with cattle, and other things, which have been set forth by vow for the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem. Then the chief of the families of Judea and of the tribe of Benjamin stood up, the priest also, and the Levites.
Oh, read that verse again. I just heard something in there that I like.
Verse 8. Then the chief of the families of Judea and of the tribe of Benjamin stood up.
Benjamin always had your back, Judah. We don't deserve the slander. For the record, we always had your back. When the northern kingdom left y'all, we had your back. Just remember that. Remember that when y'all want to bring up judges. Carry on now. Go ahead.
The priests also and the Levites, and all they whose mind the Lord had moved to go up, and to build an house for the Lord at Jerusalem.
Read.
And they that dwelt round about them, and helped them in all things with silver and gold, with horses and cattle, and with very many free gifts of a great number, whose minds were stirred up thereto. King Cyrus also brought forth the holy vessels which Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem, and had set up in his temple of idols. Now when Cyrus king of the Persians had brought them forth, he delivered them to Mithridates, his treasurer.
So Mithridates is the treasurer, right? Now watch what happens.
And by him they were delivered to Sennacherib, the governor of Judea.
Now we know that's Zerubbabel, so we're all on the same page. Now we can read and see what happened to Zerubbabel. Go ahead.
And this was the number of them, 8,000 golden cups.
Let's jump down. Let's jump down to verse 16.
Verse 16. But in the time of Artaxerxes, king of the Persians,
Yep.
Balemus, and Mithridates, and Tabalus, and Rathumus, and Bilthemus, and Samilius, the secretary, with others that were in commission with them, dwelling in Samaria and other places, wrote unto him against them that dwell in Judea and Jerusalem these letters following. To King Artaxerxes.
So the point I want you to see there is they wrote unto them, right? And when it says Artaxerxes there, it's referring to, let me see if I wrote it down. I think I wrote it in this one. Hold on. Berdiah, I think his name is. It's the king after Cambyses, the second. So it's saying Artaxerxes there, but it's not actually Xerxes, right? Because that's the confusing part when you read this. So his name is Bardiah. That's what it's referring to there, right? So, but in the time of Artaxerxes, king of the Persians, right? And you can find that in Ezra chapter 4, right? Balemus and Mithridates and Tabelius, right? These are all heathens, and Rathamus and Belthemus and Samelius, the secretary, with others that were in the commission with them, dwelling in Samaria and other places, wrote unto him against them that dwelt in Judea and Jerusalem, right? So what happened was these other nations started to come against Zerubbabel. He had a plan. He was like, yo, we're going to go back. We're going to build up the kingdom. And then the heathen started to stop his plan. So what is he going through? Tribulation. Like many of us go through. You might say, yo, I got a plan. I'm about to go do this. I'm going to go do this. I'm going to handle this. And then you run into some type of snare or trap, right? Give me Judges chapter 3 and verse 2. You run into some sort of issue with the other nations, whether it's a policy, whether it's you can't save enough money, whether it's you ain't got enough time because you got to work. You run into things in your own personal life that stop you from accomplishing what you need to accomplish. Zerubbabel dealt with the same exact thing. Go ahead.
The book of Judges chapter 3, verse 2. Only.
You can read 1 and 2. Yep.
Okay. Verse 1. Now these are the nations which the Lord left, to prove Israel by them, even as many of Israel as had not known all the wars of Canaan.
Right.
Only that the generations of the children of Israel might know, to teach them war, at the least such as before knew nothing thereof.
So the purpose of the Lord leaving the other nations around you was to teach you war. So when Zerubbabel was dealing with these other nations, guess what? He was at war. We'll find out soon he was well acquainted with war, right? He was well acquainted with what tactics the heathen used and how they moved, right? All our forefathers were, the ones that were our leaders, right? They became acquainted with this thing. We are being acquainted with the same thing. When you look at those policies at your job, when you think about being on probation at work, when you think about having a PTO policy, right? When you think about having a time you got to show up, or a policy for how long you got to take a lunch break, or traffic law, all these things are to trap you. They're to trap you. There's many traps for you. So what we got to understand is we at war every time we wake up. This class will remind us of it. Just like Zerubbabel was. When he went to go do something, he wasn't just going to be able to accomplish it. The devil had to be in opposition of him. That's how the Lord designed things on earth. Go back. I don't want it. I know what you're thinking, but I don't want it. Go ahead. No. Okay, read Ezra. Yep.
First Ezra chapter 2 and verse 17.
Yep.
To King Artaxerxes, our Lord, thy servants Rathamus,
yep,
the story writer, and Simelius, the scribe, and the rest of their council, and the judges that are in Celesyria and Phoenice. Be it now known to the Lord the King, that the Jews that are come up from you to us, being come into Jerusalem, that rebellious and wicked city, do build the marketplaces and repair the walls of it, and do lay the foundation of the temple. Now if this city and the walls thereof be made up again, they will not only refuse to give tribute, but also rebel against kings.
So the point he's making here is what? If they go back and they rebuild, they ain't finna give you your money. They're not going to listen to you. They're going to rebel against you. And what he used was our history to show him that. He said, look, they got history of kings that rebel, kings that rule the earth, kings like David and Solomon. Then they got Zedekiah. He went off. All these kings didn't listen. So if you let them go back and establish their kingdom, they're not going to follow you. They slandered us. And that's what the same exact thing is happening today. Every time something happens wrong with somebody in IUIC, it is blown up. Man, this brother went into the store, and when he went in the store, he had the nerve to tip low. Then it go on the news. IUIC member doesn't provide 15% tip. IUIC member goes to the gas pump and doesn't turn off his car. Anything you do, that's how the nations do things. It don't matter what you do. IUIC member has a parking ticket. This is how the heathen moved in the old time, right? And Zerubbabel, again, was dealing with the exact same thing. Exact same thing, right? They used our own history or our patterns of whatever we did against us. Read verse 27 now. Let's jump down.
Verse 27. And the men therein were given to rebellion and war.
See what he said? The men there were given to rebellion and war. Go ahead.
And that mighty kings and fierce were in Jerusalem, who reigned exacted tributes in Celesyria and Phoenice. Now therefore I have commanded to hinder those men from building the city, and heed to be taken that there be no more done in it, and that those wicked workers proceed no further to the annoyance of kings.
See what he said? Hey, y'all are wicked. Y'all can't do that work no more. It's going to be no more building of the temple of God. Go ahead.
Then King Artaxerxes, his letters being read, Rathamus and Semelius the scribe, and the rest that were in commission with them, were moving in haste toward Jerusalem with a troop of horsemen and a multitude of people in battle array, began to hinder the builders, and the building of the temple in Jerusalem ceased until the 2nd year of the reign of Darius, king of the Persians.
Okay, so the point here is what? They started to build. They built the foundation, right? Let's go to Ezra chapter 4 real quick just so I can make that point.
Ezra chapter 3 and verse 11. And they sang together by course and praising and giving thanks unto the Lord, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid.
So the foundation was laid at this point. But then when we're reading in 1 Ezra chapter 2, they're hindering us after the foundation laid. So the foundation's laid, and now we have stopped from the time of Cyrus all the way to Darius, right? So in between that, you got Cyrus, right? And then you have Cambyses II, and you have Bardiah, right? You have these kings that come in between, and they stopped us from building for a few years. What we got to be able to look at is those are the type of things that are going to happen in your life, where you got a plan, you got something you want to get done, and there's going to be deterrents set in your way to see how you move. Are you going to actually stop? So let's keep going. Let's go to 1 Ezra chapter 3 and verse 1 now.
1 Ezra chapter 3, verse 1. Now when Darius reigned, he made a great feast unto all his subjects.
He just put Judah on his name. He changed it to Darius, but I think it's Darius. But
My bad.
you can read it again. It's all right.
When Darius reigned, he made a great feast unto all his subjects, and unto all his household, and unto all the princes of Media and Persia,
Go ahead.
and to all the governors and captains and lieutenants that were under him from India unto Ethiopia, of 127 provinces.
So this is how much land, right, or how much they owned or were ruling. 127 provinces. Go ahead.
And when they had eaten and drunken, and being satisfied were gone home, then Darius the king went into his bedchamber and slept, and soon after awaked.
So he went, he had a party, he went to sleep. Go ahead.
Then 3 young men that were of the guard that kept the king's body spake one to another.
Okay, let's stop there, right? Because this is where we start to get into the immortals, right? So the king's guard, they were known as the immortals. You may hear that name and you go like, what? Why would they call them immortals? So we're going to dig into it. Let's start with the first article. And again, this all ties back to Zerubbabel. We'll see why in a second. But I want y'all to pay attention as we go through some things on the immortals.
Persian immortals.
Scroll down.
The 10,000 immortals were the elite force of the Persian army of the Achaemenid Empire. They formed the king's personal bodyguard and were also considered the shock troops of the infantry in Persian warfare. They are among the most famous fighting forces of the ancient world.
So they are among the most famous fighting forces of the ancient world. And they were what? The king's bodyguards. The king's bodyguards were the immortals. Go ahead.
Their name comes from the policy of always keeping their number at exactly 10,000. If one of their numbers were killed or could not otherwise fulfill his responsibilities, another was chosen to replace him, thus giving the impression that they could not be killed and so were immortal and invincible.
So in these times, right, you ain't have social media, right? So imagine you fighting dudes and they like, yo, they immortal. Every time you knock one down, another one come back. That'd be terrifying to hear about. You know, like, hey, I got 10,000 troops too, but every time I hit one of theirs down, they bring one back or 2 back. And it's like they're not dying, right? Look, I still want some more in that article. Don't drop it yet. We appreciate you though. Scroll down. I want this quote. So that's what you gotta think about, right? So these immortals, they had a reputation in the ancient world, right? When Persia was ruling, he had these 127 provinces, and he had this force of 10,000 men that were known as the immortals, the king's bodyguards. Go ahead, scroll down. That right there is what I want. That quote.
On the right.
Yep.
The immortals were chosen from the warriors who had proven themselves worthy both in martial skill and quality of character.
So not only are these men able to fight, but they had a certain character about them. That's going to be important as we go on, right? Let's get Matthew chapter 5 verse 13, right? So there were 10,000 men given this rank, right? There were 10,000 men given this rank.
Matthew.
So when we actually, I don't even want that yet. Let's keep reading. Let's go to let's go to that video. I got it right under there. We're going to start at 4:12. So this is going to break down a day in the life, right, of an immortal. Let's play it.
He is a native Persian from a humble family. Among the 9,000 immortals, commoners like Armin were the majority, while only 1,000 were selected from the nobility to serve as officers. Armin began his military training at the tender age of 5, following the path of most Persian boys. For 15 years, he learned horse riding, archery, and spear handling.
So 15
Another
years from
crucial
the age of
aspect
5,
their
he was doing
education was
training.
instilling a sense of honesty. The Achaemenid Empire placed great value on qualities such as obedience, moral conduct, and the unwavering commitment to truthfulness, regardless of the circumstances. Upon reaching the age of 20, Persian boys were enlisted in military service. Regardless of their assigned troops, the army's structure remained consistent and decimal-based. Our protagonist, Masumi, along with 9 of his comrades, belonged to a unit called the Dathabas, led by the Dosab Opatis. 10 Dathabas formed a Sataba under the command of its leader. A Hazarabam consisted of 10 Satabas, totaling 1,000 warriors. And finally, a Hyvarabam represented a division comprising 10,000 soldiers. It's worth noting that the Immortals were part of this special division, reserved for exceptionally talented individuals like Armin. Interestingly, the Persians themselves did not refer to the squad members as immortals. This name was coined by Greek historians, from whom we derive most of our knowledge about Persian history, including the immortals. Herodotus called them immortals because if a member of the guard fell in battle, another soldier was immediately recruited to replace them. Thus, the Hyvarabam consistently maintained a strength of 10,000 men, regardless of losses. The Persians themselves referred to the immortals as Amartaka, which meant the personal army of the king. Many historians generally believe that the Persian army had superior military units, including the immortals, who stood out due to their unique characteristics. Unlike other units, the immortals were not disbanded after the war. Their numbers were maintained, and one of the Hazarabams, consisting of 1,000 nobility members, also served as the king's personal guard. The commander of this unit held a prominent position in the state, serving as an advisor to the king and playing a crucial role in matters of security and military advice. Naturally, the privileges associated with such positions made even ordinary members of the Immortals feel superior to soldiers in the rest of the army. This distinction is evident in the equipment worn by our protagonist, Armin.
All right, you can cut it now.
Although he may appear different.
All right. So the main thing I want y'all to see is what? This was a lifelong thing, right? This was a lifelong thing. These men had a commitment to military, to building their character, to learning, right? These are things we got to look at when we look at they were called what? Immortals, right? They were called immortals. It's important, right? We as a nation, we're striving for immortality, right? These men were called immortals. Look at their dedication. From the age of 5, they were focused on it. Give me Proverbs 22 and verse 6 real quick. From the age of 5, they were focused on what it took to make them a member of the immortals. So how much more diligent must we be with the truth, right? Proverbs 22 and 6.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Go ahead.
The rich ruleth over the...
That's it. The point there is these men were children being trained up in the way that they should go, right? And that's how they ended up being immortals. They didn't just start. So all of us, when we come in, God says what? Be like a little child. Then we got to be disciplined. We got to be diligent. We got to endure in order to become what? Immortal. Immortal. These men became immortal, quote unquote, right? By what? Being diligent. Give me Wisdom of Solomon. Sirach 6 and verse 18. Sirach 6 and verse 18. So it's very imperative, right, that we see the parallel between these things, because we're going to read about our forefathers Zerubbabel in a second. Read that.
Sirach chapter 6 and verse 18. My son, gather instruction from thy youth up, so shalt thou find wisdom to thine old age.
In order for you to have wisdom in your old age, it's going to take you listening when you're young in the truth, when you're 5 years old, in the sense of like these young kids. They had to listen from the time they were 5 in order to be grown men with the ability to actually serve their nation. That's what it took. It took them actually listening and learning from somebody in order to get to the place they wanted to be, right? It was a career. It was a lifelong work that you're looking at when you see these men. Give me the next video real quick. The one I posted right after this.
Few military units were as feared as the legendary Immortals. These were men personally handpicked from across the great Persian Empire to serve as the king's personal bodyguard and his shock troops. Wherever victory seemed elusive or difficult, the Immortals were sent in to secure it, and they nearly always did. To become an Immortal, you had to be personally selected by a senior military officer and then recommended to the king and his court for service. Only the most capable, bravest, and most loyal soldiers could hope to claim a spot amongst the most elite of Persian fighting forces. But skill, strength, and loyalty weren't all that was needed, as Immortals needed to be men above all reproach. And thus, strong moral character was a necessary quality to serve. So much for the man monsters pictured in the movie 300. As one of the longest lived of the ancient world's military forces, the Immortals existed since the reign of Cyrus II in 550 BCE, and were in service until sometime in the 2nd century CE. It's believed the Immortals were organized by Commander Pantea Ardishbot, a woman who would also go on to become the first commander. This may have been shocking to other cultures, but in the Persian military, women often held high-ranking positions. Once more, it's getting kinda hard to figure out who the good guys in 300 really were. The soldiers who would serve as Immortals were recruited from amongst the best of the best, and would be replaced the moment that one of them was killed, injured, or otherwise incapacitated and unable to fight. This way, the Immortals always maintained their numbers at exactly 10,000, which helped fuel myths of their invincibility in battle. In ancient warfare, myths were just as useful tools in defeating your enemy as information warfare is today. Soldiers who would become an Immortal would often come from Persian and Med noble families, who could afford the expensive equipment required to be a soldier. These men would begin to train at the age of 5 with archery, javelin throwing, and horseback riding. They were forced to endure the harsh elements with little protection, and often had to forage for food to supplement their meager rations. This was meant to toughen them up as soldiers and prepare them for the rigors of combat. However, physical education was only part of the equation. A good soldier needs to be mentally and spiritually tough too. And to that end, the young men would then be taught Persian religion as well as history of the Persian Empire, with emphasis on the noble deeds of Persian heroes. A strong moral compass was instilled into each young man, along with loyalty to the Persian king and people both. All this at a time when most Greeks would happily sell themselves out as mercenaries to the highest bidder. Lastly, Persian soldiers-to-be were trained to always speak the truth, a fact that even their bitter enemies, the Greeks, made note of and approved of.
All right.
Being an Immortal was not just difficult and dangerous.
Give me Proverbs 23 and verse 23. I want y'all to remember that there was a commitment amongst these men to the truth, right? So there was morality, quote unquote, in their eyes amongst them, right? What did God say about us when it comes to our commitment to the truth? Proverbs 23 and verse 23.
Proverbs chapter 23, verse 23. Buy the truth and sell it not.
One more time.
Buy the truth and sell it not.
Go ahead.
Also wisdom and instruction and understanding.
So the Lord told us to buy the truth and sell it not. He told us to put everything, invest what you got into the truth, and don't get rid of it. Keep it. Hold on to it. So this nation, right, these Immortals, quote unquote, were focused on the truth. That's what they were focused on. They said, hey, above everything, we need the truth. So remember that when we get into Zerubbabel, right? Let's keep reading. Let's go back to, actually, no, I want the books. Because I want us to understand what the Immortals meant to, quote unquote, Persia, right? Quote unquote, Persia. Then we could really look at our forefather and understand who he was. All right, so let's look at this. This is a book.
Battles of the Ancient World, 1285 BC to AD 451.
All right, we can scroll down. Zoom in on that section that's like got the marks next to it. Just want that. It's a few quick things we're going to get out these books. Just scroll down. Scroll up.
Up.
Right there, the section that's marked. Go ahead.
A select group of heavy infantry, numbered at no less than 10,000, were known as the Immortals, a band whose bravery, experience, and fraternity made them feared throughout the ancient world. Persian cavalry were simply equipped to their infantry and, as a marathon, were usually more numerous than Greek cavalry. Historians judge the size of the Persian army at a marathon to be 19,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry.
Okay, so there were a lot of people in the Persian army, right? Obviously, they had 127 provinces, right? So let's scroll down. There's one more section I want on the next page. Let's read that as well. I think it's over to the left. And again, this is just backing up what we heard in the videos, right? We got to have multiple sources just so people, because some people might say, hey, you making that up, right? Go ahead.
At the core of Darius's forces were the
celebrated
and dreaded Immortals, the elite division of the Persian army.
The elite division of the Persian army. Go ahead.
The unit's name came from the Persian practice of replacing each casualty in that 10,000-man unit with another picked soldier whose spear would bear the golden pomegranate of the elite.
All right, let's get to the next book. Right? We're reading these things for a reason. Read Proverbs 22 and verse 29. Right? These men must have been walking this way, right? They must have been. Read that.
Proverbs chapter 22, verse 29.
Because the laws of God are always true, right? Go, read that.
Seest thou a man diligent in his business? He shall stand before kings. He shall not stand before mean men.
So in order for them to be the bodyguard of the king, these men must have been diligent on another level. They must have been about their training, about their studying, about the truth. Ultimately, right? They weren't keeping the laws of God, but what we got to be able to see, right? Well, not all of them, right? But the ones that were our people that were amongst these heathen in these positions, they had to be walking upright. They had to be diligent. They had to have a different mindset in terms of how they were moving to make it to this point. Just like Daniel did, right? Just like Moses did, just like Joseph did. Many of our forefathers sat high in these kingdoms that were against us. Go ahead.
Warfare in the Old Testament, the organization, weapons, and tactics of ancient Near Eastern armies.
Go ahead. Scroll down.
One particular unit of Medo-Persian infantry stood out. Herodotus calls the elite unit of Persian infantry the 10,000, or the Immortals, because any member who was killed or fell ill would be immediately replaced to keep their number at exactly 10,000. This unit served as the royal bodyguard, including while on campaign. Each of these Immortals wore a felt cap and an elaborately decorated long-sleeved tunic.
They had on pants, sisters. Right? Men wore pants. That's important. Go ahead.
Over a coat of scale armor, apparently inferior to Greek armor of the time. In battle, the Immortals carried a bow and quiver, a sword or large dagger, a wicker shield.
They had on all type of weaponry, right? They had on their shoulder, they had a bow, they had a quiver, they had a sword, they had a spear. They was ready to go. Go ahead.
And a short spear with a counterbalance made of silver or gold. Only Persians, Medes, or Elamites could serve in the Immortals.
When you read that, right, it's important to remember, what were they doing to our nation when we came there? They were assimilating us. Mm-hmm. So when you read only Persians, Medes, or Elamites could serve in the Immortals, well, if they took a nation and brought them captive and assimilated them, they would be like Persians. It's just like Americans being in the American army, right? Many of you brothers and sisters have joined the army or the armed forces because what? You're viewed as an American. Exactly. Go ahead.
And a short spear with a counterbalance made of silver or gold. Only Persian, Medes, or Elamites could serve in the Immortals. When on the march, the members of this unit enjoyed superior food, as well as perks such as concubines and attendants.
So they had money, clothes, and the last word that rhymes with that, you might know the Jay-Z song. Maybe, right? Maybe you know it. If you don't, I'll let you fill in the blank on your own, right? But the point is, they had that. So when we read it, when we think about them, right, okay, they must have been diligent, but they also had everything that could cause them to be distracted with them. They had food with them. They had women with them, right? They had alcohol. When you read about them, they had much alcohol with them. They gave them a whole bunch of wine. These are things that they had in their possession. So remember, we're reading about Zerubbabel, and I'm building it up so you can understand what did the Immortals have? What was at their disposal, right? Give me the next book.
Floral designs and columns with double volute Ionic capitals, as well as members of the 10,000 Immortals in their rich dresses, covered the walls.
So in the palace, there were images of the Immortals. Imagine you walking around, you are immortal, and your picture on the wall. This is the level of status that these men had in the kingdom. So we understand. Not only were they guarding the king, they were on the walls of the palace. So when other people came to pay tribute, they saw images of you. Right? So what does that do? What would that make a lot of brothers do? Imagine if you walked in a building, you was going to work, and your face was on the wall. What type of humility would you have to move a certain way? I'm bringing all this up so we can really think about this. Right? These men had status. They had what? Money, clothes, and the other word that I don't want to say because it might be a little kid watching. Right? They had all of this. They had riches, right? They were paid for doing their work in the military. So this is all important when we think about the mindset that our forefather Zerubbabel could have had. Go ahead.
Still farther back of Xerxes, two robed immortals stand in the usual position of attention, spear resting on toe.
That's important, right? Their spear was resting on their toe, right? So when you see images, you'll be able to tell, okay, what does it represent? The immortals, when they stood, they had their spear resting on their toe. So like when you read about Esther and they were going to come in and they would surround the king, they would stand at attention with their spear resting on their toe. So everybody understands, right? That was how they showed their discipline. Go ahead.
At the opposite end, the scene is closed by one more immortal and by a similarly robed attendant who carries a metal pail from which to refuel the burners with the precious frankincense.
So they had frankincense and myrrh burning, and they had the immortals standing around the king with the spear on their toe, right? Scroll down now. I think it might be in here. Scroll down. So now this is the side, right? This is the side of the temple. This is an image of it, right? And it's showing you what? You see how they're standing? Their right foot is out, and they have their spears, right? And the spears resting upon their toe. Let's get the one in color. Because people might be like, yo, you drew that. You drew this one. Yo, I don't know, I don't really know how to do no art, but you might think that. Zoom into that now. And I want you to go to the left. Actually, read the bottom first on eyes.
Right there in the middle?
Yep, right at the bottom.
It says Persian and Median nobles on Persepolis relief.
All right, go to the left. Right, and you see what's happening on the left there. The spears resting where? On their toe, on their foot. It's the same thing, right? So the point I'm showing to you is this is one image in color. This is one image. There was one image with no color. But it's just showing you what? How these men were living, right? They had status. That's why I'm going through all this. So now let's go back to the Bible and let's read about what happened here. First Ezra chapter 3. And we're going to read from verse 4 down.
The book of First Ezra chapter 3, verse 4. Then 3 young men that were of the guard that kept the king's body spake one to another. Let every one of us
So remember, those 3 guards, they're immortals, right? Go ahead.
Let every one of us speak a sentence. He that shall overcome, and whose sentence shall seem wiser than the others, unto him shall the king Darius give great gifts and great things in token of victory. As to be clothed in purple, to drink in gold, and to sleep upon gold, and a chariot with bridles of gold, and a head tire of fine linen, and a chain about his neck.
So whoever won, right, was going to get status, more status, because they already had status. It was like NBA players, I don't know, making a bet on $100,000, right? It's like whoever win this, get my Bugatti. I'm like, you already got status, so understand what's happening here. Go ahead.
And he shall sit next to Darius because of his wisdom, and shall be called Darius his cousin.
Go ahead.
And then every one wrote a sentence, sealed it, and laid it under King Darius his pillow, and said that when the king is risen, some will give him the writings, and of whose side the king and the 3 princes of Persia shall judge that his sentence is the wisest. To him shall the victory be given, as was appointed.
Read.
The first wrote, wine is the strongest.
So the first bodyguard, right, or immortal wrote, wine is the strongest. Go ahead.
The second wrote, the king is strongest.
The second immortal was the ass kisser.
Yeah.
That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to win by kissing ass. That's what I always take this. Go ahead.
The third wrote, women are strongest. But above all things, truth beareth away the victory.
Interesting, right? Because remember, the key thing for that kingdom was truth. Remember that. Go ahead.
Now when the kings was risen up, they took their writings and delivered them unto him, and so he read them. And sitting forth, he called all the princes of Persia and Media, and the governors, and the captains, and the lieutenants, and the chief officers, and sat him down in the royal seat of judgment. And the writings were read before them. And he said, call the young men, and they shall declare their own sentences. So they were called and came in. And he came unto them, declare unto us your mind concerning the writings. Then began the first who had spoken of the strength of wine. And he said thus, O ye men, how exceeding strong is wine! It causes all men to err that drink it.
So he said, okay, wine will cause you to go off if you get drunk. Let's keep reading. Watch.
And make it the mind of the kings and of the fatherless child to be all one, of the bondman and the freeman, of the poor man and of the rich. It turneth also every thought into jollity and mirth, so that a man remembereth neither sorrow nor debt.
So think about this, yo. I don't want y'all to think about it like it's boring. Everybody in the room, and they leaning forward. They like, yo, whoever went finna be called Darius' cousin, bro. Yo, we got to go watch this. Like, look who he invited. He invited captains, and he invited governors, and he invited chief officers.
And the chief officers.
Yes, these are men with status. So they sitting around, they're like, yo, bring the wine out. Let these dudes say whatever they're going to say. It's like a competition. It's like it's entertainment to an extent for them, right? So everybody's kind of sitting around and they're leaning in and they listening, right? So think about it that way, like, oh, they're giving speeches like, I don't know if I agree with that. That's what's going on when you read this. Don't read it and be boring, right? I know a lot of people like to read the Bible. They be like, and wine is the strongest. No, don't read it like that. Read it like he's saying it. He's trying to put flair on it so he can win this competition. You got to paint the picture. That's what y'all got to see. And these is bodyguards. They got they armor on, right? They got status. You know, they probably got a concubine in the corner rooting them on, so you know how they talking. They trying to be louder because they like, yo, we got to win. We got to go to the moon. Go ahead.
And it maketh every heart rich, so that a man remembereth neither king nor governor. And it maketh to speak all things by talents. And when they are in their cups, they forget their love both of friends and brethren. And a little after draw out swords. But when they are from the wine, they remember not what they have done. O ye men, is not wine the strongest, that enforceth to do thus? And when he had so spoken, he held his peace.
Read.
Then the second,
Chapter 4 and verse 1.
Chapter 4 and verse 1. Then the second that had spoken of the strength of the king began to say, O ye men, do not men excel in strength, that bear rule over sea and land, and all things in them? But yet the king is more mighty, for he is Lord of all these things, and hath dominion over them, and whatsoever he commandeth them they do. If he bid them make war the one against the other, they do it. If he send them out against the enemies, they go, and break down mountains, walls, and towers. They slay and are slain, and transgress not the king's commandment. If they get the victory, they bring all to the king, as well the spoil as all things else. Likewise for those that are no soldiers, and have not to do with wars, but use husbandry, when they have reaped again that which they have sown, they bring it to the king, and compel one another to pay tribute unto the king.
So he's making an argument that no matter who you are in the kingdom, you give honor to the king, right? Go ahead.
And yet he is but one man. If he command to kill, they kill. If he command to spare, they spare. If he command to smite, they smite. If he command to make desolate, they make desolate. If he command to build, they build. If he command to cut down, they cut down. If he command to plant, they plant. So all his people and his armies obey him. Furthermore, he lieth down, he eateth, and drinketh, and taketh his rest. And these keep watch round about him. Neither may anyone depart, and do his own business, neither disobey them in anything. O ye men, how should not the king be mightiest, when he in such sort is obeyed? And he held his tongue.
I know after he finished, he leaned back. He's like, I got him. Yeah, this the one. Yeah, people were snapping. Ain't nobody disagree to this. I know for a fact, everybody in the room like, he right. He right. What I think is after he went, everybody thought he won. Yeah. Everybody thought he won. They're like, dang, ain't nobody going to be able to top that. This is how it's going in my head. The first person when you're like, all right, whatever, wine, maybe. Then he broke down the king. Everybody like, I don't want to die. He right. Start clapping. Now, contestant number 3. Let's go.
Then the third, who hath spoken of woman and of the truth, this was Zerubbabel, began to speak.
This is our forefather Zerubbabel. So now he going to speak, right? Real quick, give me Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. Now, when we think about all the things we just learned about the immortals, we got to consider this, right? This is what's about to go down right here. And many of us, this is how we got to be. When you at work, when you in the world, people are supposed to see this about you. Read that.
The book of Matthew, chapter 5, verse 13. Ye are the salt of the earth.
You the salt of the earth. Don't nobody like no bland chicken. That's what they just gave, you know? Don't nobody like no chicken with no salt on it. The Lord said the nation of Israel is what?
Ye are the salt of the earth.
Go ahead.
But if the salt have lost his savor, wherewith shall it be salted?
Go ahead.
It is thenceforth good for nothing, but to be cast out and to be trodden under foot of men.
Read.
Ye are the light of the world.
Ye are the light of the world. When you go in a room, you're going to light up darkness. Yeah, okay, what you said was cool. Your thought was all right. but I'm the light of the world.
Yeah.
That's how we got to, that's how, now when I'm picturing this is how Zerubbabel walked up. He probably slid up. I don't think he walked. I think he floated. This is how I think of my forefathers. I don't read this and just be like, yo, he walked up all dull and said, oh, today we're going to talk about women and the truth. He didn't do it like that. Yeah, his cape flew back. He slid up and took his mask off and said, hey, let me tell y'all something. Let me holler at y'all. And he was Judah. He probably had gold flakes in his hair. You know what I'm saying? He probably had gold flakes. He probably did a spin move. This is just how I read the Bible. So when I'm thinking about it, this is how Zerubbabel was moving in the earth. And he wasn't no dummy. We just looked at it, right? They had to study. They had to train from the age of 5. Think about what this man was before we read his opinion, right, in this argument. He had to fight from the age of 5. He had to be he had to learn in school. He had to be disciplined. He couldn't disobey the king's commandment. He had to be chosen by somebody in the kingdom to be in that position. And not only was he one of the immortals, he was close and high ranking in the immortals because he wouldn't have been by the king's bedside if he wasn't. Y'all understand what I'm saying, right? Exactly. Say it on the mic so people can hear you because you made a good point. But if they can't hear you, I don't know if they're going to be able to understand.
I thought you was going to say it again. But yeah, they had 2 educations. That he learned ours, and then he also had to learn theirs as well.
Exactly. That's exactly the point. So he not only understood, and that's what we got to do here in captivity. We got to understand their system. Give me Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16. That's also going to apply to what we're about to read, right? It says, ye are the light of the world, right? That's what we got to be. Matthew 10 and 16, and we're going to go back to where we was.
The book of Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16. Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves.
That's what he about to do. Because he was wise. He understood, yo, this is what they like. These are the things they interested in. This is how they move. This is what's going to sway them. I'm gonna be harmless, but I'm wise as a serpent in this room. And I'm confident about it. I'm not finna walk up here and lose to the dude that just finished ass kissing. The dude that talked about wine probably drunk right now. Right? He probably drunk right. Think about it. Everybody in there, he probably drunk right now. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He probably drunk right now. We ain't listening to this dude. Everybody drinking. We don't want to hear that, man. We don't want to hear about wine. You lost. Your argument was trash. That's how I'm thinking about it, right? So when he comes up, give me back Matthew chapter 5, verse 14.
Matthew.
This is how Zerubbabel rolled up. Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. This is what he was thinking.
Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. Ye are the light of the world.
Yep.
A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid.
His wisdom could not be hid. Right? Go ahead.
Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all that are in the house.
That's what he's about to do. He's about to light up the whole court of the king. Go ahead.
Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven.
We're going to see if that happened. We're going to see if at the end of his speech, if they glorify his Father which is in heaven. Because what we got to understand is that's what we sent here to do. Your wisdom, your ability to carry yourself a certain way is going to change how everybody views the nation of Israel. That's why you got the understanding you got. Just like Zerubbabel had the understanding he had, right? He was trained from a child to be what he was so that he could glorify his Father. So he let his light shine. Let's jump back. Let's read about it now.
First Ezra chapter 4, verse 13.
Okay, now, I'm telling y'all got a picture. He got the, maybe he talk like Denzel, if you like Denzel voice. Maybe talk like Morgan Freeman, if you like Morgan Freeman voice. Me personally, he's talking like James Earl Jones. You know what I mean? James Earl Jones is speaking. Go ahead.
First
he couldn't be killed. Nah, I don't know about Idris Elba. He couldn't not. Well, maybe he had. Maybe for the sisters. Maybe for the sisters, he was Idris Elba. You know what I'm saying? Repent, sis. Right? Know where your brain went. Right? So the point I'm making, right, is when it comes to him, you can't picture him no dull dude, right? He wasn't talking like Pee Wee Herman. Yeah, he wasn't no Pee Wee Herman. The dude woke up and he's smooth, and he gonna get ready to talk. Let's go.
Then the third, who hath spoken of women and of the truth, this was Zerubbabel, began to speak. O ye men, it is not the great king, nor the multitude of men, neither is it wine that excelleth. Who is it then that ruleth them, or hath the lordship over them? Are they not women? Women have borne the king and all the people that bear rule by sea and land. Even of them came they, and they nourished them up that planted the vineyards, from whence the wine cometh. These also make garments for men. These bring glory unto men. And without women cannot men be. Yea, and if men have gathered together gold and silver, or any other goodly thing, do they not love a woman which is comely in favor and beauty?
The scriptures say men love nothing more than the beauty of a woman, right? Go ahead.
And letting all those things go, do they not gape and even with open mouth fix their eyes fast on her. And have not all men more desire unto her than unto silver or gold, or any goodly thing whatsoever? And man leaveth his own father that brought him up, and his own country, and cleaveth unto his wife.
What he's saying is X-rated if you read into it. You have to understand what he's actually saying. He's not just saying men love women to sit next to him, right? So we all on the same page. He getting at something a little bit more carnal, right? So we understand. This is what. So now everybody in the room like he right, he right. I mean he ain't wrong. All the kings are like he ain't. I mean he right. I mean the king is important, but damn the king, damn the king. If I gotta pick between the king and that, huh? The king could go. That's what's happening. I want y'all to see what's happening in the room when we reading it. Don't just read it like it's dry. You hearing it, you like, well, I mean that king argument was all right till I heard this. Go ahead.
He sticketh not to spend his life with his wife, and remembered neither father nor mother nor country.
He said he right. I did leave my home. I did leave my mother. I don't even know where my mother at right now. I don't even know where my father. I don't know what he doing. Who cares? He talking that talk. Go ahead.
But this also you must know, that women have dominion over you. Do you not labor and toil and give and bring all to the woman? Yea, a man taketh his sword, and goeth his way to rob and to steal, to sail upon the sea and upon rivers, and looketh upon a lion, and goeth in the darkness. And when he hath stolen, spoiled, and robbed, he bringeth it to his love.
Brothers fighting lions for a woman. Look at what he's saying. Brother like, damn, I fought a lion last week. He ain't lying. The Immortals used to hunt lions, so we on the same page. That was something they did for fun, was go out and hunt lions. So when we reading this, don't read it like, okay, that's just random as hell. Why you talking about hunting lions? Nah, that's what they would do for fun. So they would wear the coats of the lions to show how tough they were.
They learned that because they survived in the wilderness.
They survived in the wilderness. But not only that, it gave them status. So when he said they go out and they hunt lions and bring it back to their love, imagine you walk in with 2 lion furs on your back, what you look like. The concubines is all over you. Think about it. What you got to understand, right, is these not men that's keeping a law and got one wife. They out the spirit. That's exactly. He got the machismo. Go ahead.
Wherefore a man loveth his wife better than father or mother.
Yep.
Yea, many there be that have run out their wits for women, and became servants for their sakes.
That's a fact, too. Many have gone crazy for women. Go ahead.
Many also have perished, have erred, and sinned for women.
Let's read.
And now do ye not believe me? Is not the king great in his power? Do not all regions fear to touch him? Yet did I see him, and upon me the king's concubine, the daughter of the admirable Bardachus, sitting at the right hand of the king, and taking the crown from the king's head, and setting it upon her own head, she also struck the king with her left hand.
So it's not bad enough that she slapped him, but she slapped him with the left hand. That's a disrespectful hand. She put his crown on and smacked him. You don't even deserve my right hand. And he just watch what he do next.
And yep.
Oh yeah, but he did it wise. After he warmed him up, after he butt him up and said, yo, everybody love women. Everybody will go and rob and die for a woman. Now he talking smack to the king. At the same time, this is the wisdom. The king can't do nothing but agree with it. Yo, you right, though. You right. She did slap me. You right. I ain't do nothing. She slapped. She looked good. Slapped fire out of me, too. You right. This is what's happening in the room. Think about what's happening in the room. Go ahead.
And yet for all this, the king gaped and gazed upon her with open mouth. If she laughed upon him, he laughed also. But if she took any displeasure at him, the king was fain to flatter, that she might be reconciled to him again.
Oh, simp king. Go ahead.
O ye men, how can it be but women should be strong, seeing they do thus? Then the king and the princes looked one upon another. So he began to speak of the truth. O ye men, are not women strong? Great is the earth, high is the heaven, swift is the sun in his course. For he compasseth the heavens round about, and fetcheth his course again to his own place in one day. Is he not great that maketh these things? Therefore great is the truth, and stronger than all things.
So now he transitions. He said, okay, women are powerful, but there's a God that made a sun that goes on a course every day. It rises and it goes on its journey and it sets, right? Every day. Rises in the east, sets in the west, every single day. Is not he greater? Go ahead.
All the earth call upon the earth. All the earth call upon the truth.
Upon the what?
All the earth calleth upon the truth.
Now think about what just happened. He said, damn, the brother cold. Because everybody in there believes what? The principle that truth is the main thing that they need to focus on. Now when he talking about the truth, he talking about the laws of God. But to them, they just mean truth. So he knew how to what? Use the right words. Get them to be on his side. He was swaying them. This man was intelligent. Go ahead.
And the heaven blesseth it. All works shake and tremble at it. And with it is no unrighteous thing. Wine is wicked. The king is wicked.
See what he just said? Now think about it. He done hit him with truth. Now they like, you know what? Truth is greater than everything. Then wine is the devil. That woman is the devil. She slapped me. Go ahead. Who he said was the devil?
Wine is wicked. The king is wicked. Women are wicked.
Look at what he did, man. He done said everybody other answer is garbage and nonsense in his speech. So now he's knocked everything down. Go ahead.
Even the own thing he said was strong.
Exactly. Even his own thing, he said truth is above all of that. Go ahead.
All the children of men are wicked, and such are all their wicked works. And there is no truth in them. And their unrighteousness also they shall perish.
He just told everybody in the room, you're going to die. They still like, man, this is good. Because he's wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. Go ahead.
As for the truth, it endureth, and is always strong. It liveth and conquereth forevermore. With her there is no accepting of persons or rewards, but she doeth the things that are just, and refraineth from all unjust and wicked things. And all men do well like of her works. Neither in her judgment is any unrighteousness. And she is the strength, kingdom, power, and majesty of all ages. Blessed be the God of truth.
Blessed be the God of truth. Go ahead.
And with that he held his peace, and all the people then shouted.
Oh, they started turning up. They said, wow, amazing. His grandmama might have been in the back. I don't know. You know, this is how I like to think of things, like it's a graduation or something. They all started screaming, right? Go ahead.
And said, great is truth, and mighty above all things.
Give me the book of Psalms 108 and verse 4. That's the point. They all said, great is truth and mighty above all things. Let's read that.
Psalm chapter 108 and verse 4. For thy mercy is great above the heavens, and thy truth reacheth unto the clouds. Be thou exalted, O God, above the heavens, and thy glory above all the earth.
So God's truth is above everything on this earth. And he got the heathen to agree with that. Why? Because of his wisdom, his ability to carry himself, right? The reputation he had as a man. Think about all these things when we're reading this, man. This man wasn't focused on being an immortal in the carnal sense. He was focused on being an immortal when it came to God. That's why he gave the answer he gave. And that's how we got to be. Okay, it's one thing to have a certain status in the society or push for that. But what was he focused on? He was focused on being immortal for God. 1 Corinthians 13 and 6.
The book of 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 6. Rejoiceth not in iniquity, but rejoiceth in the truth.
See what he said? Rejoice in the truth. Don't have pleasure in sin and in your status, but have pleasure in keeping the laws of God and moving in the truth, right? Now let's jump back to first Ezra. So now Zerubbabel wins, right? Let's see what he does. Let's just get to the point. Let's see. Start at verse 42.
Verse 42. Then said the king unto him, ask what thou wilt more than is appointed in the writing, and we will give it thee, because thou art found wisest, and thou shalt sit next to me, and shalt be called my cousin. Then said he unto the king, remember thy vow, which thou hast vowed to build Jerusalem, and the day when thou camest to thy kingdom.
Okay, now drop that. Give me Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 25. What we got to look at is the first thing he asked for was what? Let me go help my nation. What had happened up to this point was the nation had been hindered, right? So he was hindered all the way to the time of Darius. So the first thing he asked for was what? Let me go help my nation. Let's read that.
The book of Hebrews chapter 11 verse 25. Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God.
So that's what Moses chose, right? But Zerubbabel chose the same thing. Read it again. Watch.
Choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God.
Go ahead.
Than to enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season.
All he had to do was say, all right, I'm cool. I'm finna sit in my place as the cousin of Darius, and we finna chill out. I don't got to go back and rebuild nothing. I already tried. The heathen came against me. Let me just post up with my riches. Go ahead.
Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt.
He saw his value in keeping the laws of God and building up his nation. He saw his treasure in Christ as more than his treasure he would have got in Persia. Go ahead.
For he had respect unto the recompense, the reward.
That's
of the reward.
27. Verse 27.
Verse 27. By faith he forsook Egypt,
Yep.
not fearing the wrath of the king, for he endured as seeing him who was invisible.
So he was focused on what? True immortality. Being with God, being with Christ. That's what he was worried about, because he could have easily said, yo, I'm just going to take my position and I'm going to chill out. Let's go to Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 3. This is what guided him. When we read about him, Zerubbabel, we got to put some respect on him because the man had this right here. Proverbs 11:3. We're going to read the 6.
Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 3. The integrity of the upright shall guide them.
He had integrity. He started a work. He said, I have to finish that work. Now we're going to read kind of what happened in the middle so that we can relate to it. But he had integrity to say, you know what? I got to get back to what I need to do. I need to build up that nation. I need to build up the kingdom so that our people have a place to be. And that's what we're going through right now. The Persian Medes captivity is always interesting to me because what? The people there that were building it up knew that there was going to be a destruction that came after they built it up. They knew the temple will fall again. Just like us, we building these IUIC, we building all these protocols, but we know the heathen going to come against us. But guess what we do know in the end? In the end, we're going to rule. So we got to move and do everything we got to do right now, regardless of what the heathen's going to do against us, because we understand in the end what it's going to be. And that's the mindset that Zerubbabel had, Nehemiah, when we read about Ezra. These were Esther, Mordecai. This is the mindset that they had. Regardless of what I foresee as tribulation, I'm going to build my people up right now while I can. I'm going to do everything in my power to get them where they need to be. So read that.
The integrity of the upright shall guide them.
Read.
But the perverseness of transgressors shall destroy them.
Go.
Riches profit not in the day of wrath.
See what he said? This money ain't going to help me when Christ come back. This money ain't going to help me. I need to have righteousness with God. Go ahead.
But righteousness delivereth from death.
Read.
The righteousness of the perfect shall direct his way, but the wicked shall fall by his own wickedness. The righteousness of the upright shall deliver them, but transgressors shall be taken in their own naughtiness.
See, he said the righteousness of the upright will deliver them, right? Or, yeah, will deliver them. Meaning what? You keeping the laws of God in the last days is going to be what builds you up, what gets you to that immortality that you want. Give me Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1 and verse 15. We got to be motivated by the right thing. He was an immortal, but what he was focused on was immortality. He wanted to be a real immortal. He didn't care about his title. He didn't care about the position that he was in. He didn't care about the money he could get. What he cared about was building up his nation and getting real immortality. And that's how our mind got to be. We can't just talk about, hey, I'm the immortal. I'm going to be immortal. No. Our actions got to show that. And that's what we're looking at in Zerubbabel. His actions showed what he was focused on. Wisdom of Solomon 1 and verse 15.
The book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 15. For righteousness is immortal.
Read that again.
For righteousness is immortal.
Read.
But ungodly men with their works and words called it to them. For when they thought to have it their friend, they consumed it to naught, and made a covenant with it, because they are worthy to take part with it.
So what happens when we don't do righteous acts is death. What we got to focus on is righteousness, right? All of us have the opportunity to live forever. That's what we're here to do. But our mind got to be stayed upon that thing. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 23 now. Let's jump over one chapter. Our mind has to be stayed on that immortality. We got to really say to ourselves, I want to be an immortal. So guess what? It's going to take that training up. It's going to take that being diligent. It's going to take having that wisdom. It's going to take letting your light shine. How to move at your job. How to create careers. All these things we can see in this one man are things that we can take back and say, this is how we become the real immortals. Read that.
Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 23. For God created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity.
That's why God created you. What's to be the real immortal? Not for you to die, not for you to live a mediocre life. He created you to rule on earth. So we got to have that mindset. Let's jump to Ezra chapter 5 and verse 1 real quick. Ezra chapter 5. But in the process of being immortal, right, because we're reading this and we're reading about Zerubbabel, but something happened during that time in which he first went to building, he laid the foundation, and now what we read in 1 Ezra chapter 4, right, and he gives that speech. There was something in between that I want to touch. Ezra chapter 5 and verse 1. Let's read it real quick.
The book of Ezra chapter 5, verse 1. Then the prophets Haggai, the prophet, and Zechariah, son of Iddo, prophesied unto the Jews that were in Judah and Jerusalem, in the name of the God of Israel, even unto them. Then rose up Zerubbabel, the son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, the son of Jozadak, and began to build the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. And with them were the prophets of God helping them.
So the prophets of God were helping Zerubbabel and Joshua, right? So what was happening was they were constantly getting stopped and putting in the work. Watch, read verse 3.
At the same time came to them Tatnai, governor on the other side of the river, and Shethar-Boznai, and their companions, and said thus unto them, who hath commanded you to build this house and to make up this wall? Then said we unto them after this manner, what are the names of the men that make this building?
See what happened? They're like, who's building this building? Who gave you a permit? Who said you could do this? Who said you could move this way? Every time we go about doing the work of God, these are the things that are going to happen. Every time you try to make progress, Satan has to be there. Satan has to try to stop you. That's what Zerubbabel was going through. So guess what Zerubbabel did? He fell. Go to Haggai chapter 1 and verse 1 real quick. He fell. And that's what we're reading about when we go to chapter 4. We see, okay, he stood back up. But in between, he had adversity and he fell. And that's good. Before we read that, give me Proverbs 24, I think it's 16. Huh? Yep. Give me that. Because what happens to all of us, right? Brothers and sisters, you're trying to move right. And then adversity comes. And a lot of us, the first thing we do is we quit. And that's what Zerubbabel did, despite all his wisdom, despite his status, despite the riches he may have had or the opportunity. He said, you know what, Dan, this is difficult. Everybody's coming against me. Read that.
Proverbs chapter 24 and verse 16. For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again.
That's what we got to do. We're going to read about how he rose up. He had people around him to what? God said, help him, right? Go to Haggai chapter 1 and verse 1. Look at how Haggai helped him.
Haggai chapter 1 and verse 1. In the 2nd year of Darius the king, in the 6th month, in the 1st day of the month, came the word of the Lord by Haggai the son of the prophet unto Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, the high priest, saying, Thus speaketh the Lord of hosts, saying, This people say, the time is not come, the time that the Lord's house should be built.
They said, they keep hindering us. It ain't the time right now to build this. It ain't really the time to keep going to camp all summer. It ain't really the time to do that thing in the school that we want to do. Right now ain't the time. Let's just stop. Let's just stop, man. They keep hindering us. Every time we try to move and do the right thing, it's not all lining up perfectly for me. So therefore, I'm going to quit. That's what Haggai was telling them. You're quitting because it's difficult. The people said it's not time. Go ahead.
Then came the word of the Lord by Haggai the prophet, saying, Is it time for you, O ye, to dwell in your sealed houses, and this house lie waste?
Is it time for you to collect your money from being a mortal and lay up? Go ahead.
Now therefore, thus said the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Ye have sown much and bring a little. Ye eat, but ye have not enough.
Because he was getting on Zerubbabel and he was getting on Jeshua, the high priest, mainly. Because they were the 2 leaders, and he was telling them, y'all are being lazy. Y'all are being stopped by the oppression that's against you, by the things that are in your path. What we got to realize is none of that is designed to stop us. It's designed to show us whether we're going to push through or not. That's the purpose of it. Go ahead.
Ye drink, but ye are not filled with drink. Ye clothe you, but there is none warm. And ye that earn the wages to put it into a bag with holes.
Read.
Thus said the Lord of hosts, consider your ways. Go up to the mountain and bring wood and build the house.
See, Haggai cussing them out. He said, you better go build that house. Go get you some wood. Go ahead.
And I will take pleasure in it, and I will be glorified, saith the Lord.
Read.
You looked for much, and lo, it came to little.
See, you want much. You want riches, but you ain't got nothing now because guess what? You ain't doing what I need you to do. Read.
And when you brought it home, I did blow it upon it. Why, said the Lord of hosts? Because of mine house that is waste, and you run every man into his own house.
You in the crib chilling, and there's work to be done. So therefore, I'm going to take from you until you got to get out your house. I'm going to make it uncomfortable for you. And that's what the Lord does to each and every one of us. If your focus ain't on the work of the Lord, he got to make it uncomfortable for you so you can focus on the work of the Lord. So many times we ask, why I'm going through all of this? Maybe because you don't put God first. Read.
Therefore, the heaven over you is stayed from dew, and the earth is stayed from her fruit. And I called for a drought upon the land, and upon the mountains, and upon the corn, and upon the new wine, and upon the oil, and upon that which the ground bringeth forth, and upon men, and upon cattle, and upon all the labor of the hands.
So what he did was he caused a drought. He caused them not to have the increase, to have excess. Now they were struggling. So they started to look around and say, damn, I better get right. Go to Zechariah chapter 1 real quick. Zechariah chapter 1. Read it real quick. Let's start at 1. Yep.
Zechariah chapter 1, verse 1. In the 8th month.
So the other one was the 6th month. Zechariah had to get on him again in the 8th month. Go ahead.
In the 2nd year of Darius came the word of the Lord unto Zechariah, the son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo, the prophet, saying, The Lord hath been sore displeased with your fathers.
He pissed at y'all. Go ahead.
Therefore say thou unto them, Thus said the Lord of hosts, Turn ye unto me, saith the Lord of hosts, and I will turn unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. Be not as your fathers, unto whom the former prophets have cried, saying, Thus said the Lord of hosts, turn ye now from your evil ways and from your evil doings. But they did not hear me, nor hearken unto me, saith the Lord. Your fathers, where are they? And the prophets, do they live forever? But my words and my statutes, which I commanded my servants the prophets, did they not take hold of your fathers? And they returned and said, Like as the Lord of hosts thought to do unto us, according to our ways, according to our doing, so hath he dealt with us.
Because of our wickedness, the Lord has judged us. That's what they had to understand. But he was telling them, y'all got to get right. Didn't you see the examples before you of what the Lord does when you don't do what he asks you to do? Jump over to chapter 3 and verse 1 and 2 real quick. Zechariah then gets on Joshua the high priest and says this. Watch.
Zechariah chapter 3 and verse 1. And he said unto me, Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. And the Lord said unto Satan, The Lord rebuke thee, O Satan, even the Lord that hath chosen Jerusalem rebuke thee. Is not this a brand plucked out of the fire?
He said that because Joshua had Satan on him when he wasn't doing the work of the Lord. Many of you think it's time for you to lay up, take a break, not go hard, not do what needs to be done. But he's telling them, you're not doing the work, you got Satan on you. So guess what Zerubbabel had on him? Although he had all that wisdom and all that status, Satan jumped on his back. And give me Psalms 141 and verse 5. Us looking at that, right, we got to see what? His brothers pushed him to be a real immortal. He could have just chilled and said, I'm immortal. I got the status, my picture on the wall. I got concubines. I got money coming in. What I need to go back to Jerusalem for? Read.
Psalm chapter 141 and verse 5. Let the righteous smite me, it shall be a kindness. And let him reprove me, it shall be an excellent oil.
This is what he understood. It's necessary for me to get corrected. So after he got blasted, right, go to 1 Ezra 5 and verse 6. This is what happened now. Because we read it was the 6th month, right, of that second year. Then we read it was the 8th month of that second year. Watch what happens. 1 Ezra 5 and 6 tells you what happened in chapter 4 and when. Go ahead.
1 Ezra chapter 5 and verse 6. Who spake wise sentences before Darius, the king of Persia, in the 2nd year of his reign, in the month Nisan, which is the 1st month. And these are they of Jewry that came up from the captivity.
So the point I'm making to you is what? After he was corrected, then he went and he moved properly. He was being afflicted, right, by the heathen, and they were getting on him, but he was corrected, and he started to move properly. And even when he went back, he had affliction after affliction after affliction after affliction, over and over again. We read about it when we read all through the book of Ezra. The heathen didn't stopping us all the way to even to Nehemiah when he came up. He was having different issues pop up. They tried to kill us all, right? Esther and Nehemiah. These are the things that we see as we go through this captivity, as the Persian Mede captivity. But the point is, Zerubbabel was able to fall and get back up. So go to Job chapter 32 and verse 21 and 22. We're going to get ready to wrap it up. Job 32 and verse 21.
The book of Job.
What we got to understand is your title, your status, the things that make you comfortable. God don't care about none of that. He cares about you really making sure you want to be a real immortal on this earth, moving the proper way. And we can look at Zerubbabel's life and say, he learned a lesson. He learned that, okay, I can't just take my foot off the gas. I can't be comfortable with the money I have, the status I have, right? And there were many positive things that he did, in captivity to build himself up. We got to be able to look at all of that and compare it to our life. Every one of our forefathers and our foremothers, we got to be able to dig into these scriptures and see how we can take their example and use it to better ourselves. Read that.
Job chapter 32, verse 21. Let me not, I pray you, accept any man's person, neither let me give flattering titles unto man. For I know not to give flattering titles. In so doing, my maker would soon take me away.
So in focusing on your title, you will be destroyed. Focusing on your comforts or your reputation, you'll be destroyed. You got to be focused on doing the work. That's what you got to be focused on, getting true immortality. 2 Ezra chapter 14 and verse 14. This is what we got to do. We've been put here to do a work on this earth, to get true immortality, right, and get rid of the mortal mind. Let's read that.
2 Ezra chapter 14, verse 14. Let go from thee mortal thoughts.
See what the Bible says? Let go from the mortal thoughts. Because if you think immortal, you'll say, you know what? Dang, it's a lot of things in my way. Therefore, I should stop working. But the reason those things are in your way is to what? Prove if you can fight through them. Go ahead.
Cast away the burdens of man. Put off now the weak nature.
Read.
And set aside the thoughts that are most heavy unto thee. And haste thee to flee from these times.
Because these times that we in are evil. They bring you down if you look around. If you see everything that's happening in the earth and you focus on that instead of God's laws, you'll stop moving. You'll stop moving because of all the distractions and things that are against you. Go ahead.
For yet greater evils than those which thou hast seen happened shall be done hereafter.
There's more wickedness coming. That's the point Ezra was making. It's going to get worse. So if you can't put aside those mortal thoughts, how are you going to be focused on immortality? Read.
For look how much the world shall be weaker through age. So much the more shall evils increase upon them that dwell therein.
Read.
For the truth is fled far away, and leasing is hard at hand. For now hasten the vision to come, which thou hast seen.
So the truth has fled far away on this earth. Now there's pure evil. And what we got to get back to is what? Truth being the thing that's above everything. That's going to lead us back to immortality. Sirach 19 and verse 19. We have to focus on keeping God's laws. At the end of the day, the status he could have got, it didn't matter. The money he could have got, it didn't matter. The concubines, the reputation, that didn't matter. What mattered more was him rebuilding his nation. That's what he was focused on. So when we think about the real immortals, Zerubbabel is a representation of that. And we got to have that same mindset. We got to be just like him so we can have real immortality. Read that.
Sirach chapter 19, verse 19. The knowledge of the commandments of the Lord is the doctrine of life. And they that do things that please him shall receive the fruit of the tree of immortality.
If we please the Lord, we get immortality. That's where I'm at. When we wake up in the morning, that got to be the first thing on our mind. Not TikTok, not Facebook. It's what do I do to get immortality? I don't know about y'all, but I'm trying to live forever. And so was our forefather Zerubbabel. His mindset was on, let me live forever. It wasn't on the money that's going to perish. It wasn't on the status in that kingdom that would have perished. It wasn't on what he could get with the money or where he could live or what comforts he could have in this life. It was, how do I get immortality? That's what we got to wake up and stay focused on constantly. Give me 2 Corinthians 4 and verse 17. And I know everybody on here going through something, right? Everybody that's listening, we going through something. But Zerubbabel went through something too. He went through something too. He went through afflictions. He went through people being against him, right? He was an Israelite. His people were conquered. He had to get a slave name. He went through exactly the same thing that we went through. Now, looking at all of this, what we see is what? A man that was pushing through it. Read that.
The book of 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 17. For our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory.
If we can push through this adversity and do what the Lord says is pleasing unto him, then we have glory. We have the ability to live forever. That got to be in our mind. When we think about immortality and we think about the affliction we in, the Lord said it's a light thing in comparison to what you're going to get. That has to motivate you. Yeah, okay, I know they stop you from doing what you want to do. I know the job might be against you. I know you might have difficulty with your wife and with your kids and with the car and all these different things, but your focus got to be on what? How do I get the kingdom of God? It can't be about your emotions. We just read, put away your mortal thoughts. So we're going to end with this. We're going to go to 2 Ezra chapter 2, and we're going to look at verse 45, I think I want. And we'll get out of here on that. Start at verse 44.
The book of 2 Ezra chapter 2 and verse 44. So I asked the angel and said, Sir, what are these? He answered and said unto me, These be they that have put off the mortal clothing.
They put off what?
These are they that have put off the mortal clothing.
Go ahead.
And put on the immortal, and have confessed the name of God. Now are they crowned and receive palms.
If we can put off the mortal clothing, the mortal mindset, the feelings we have, the things that we have attachment to in this world like Zerubbabel did, then we can put on immortal clothing. We can get new bodies. We're going to get a new kingdom. We're not going to have the issues we have, but we got to first put off the mortal mentality. We got to put off the carnal thinking. Go ahead.
Then said I unto the angel, What young person is it that crowneth them, and giveth them palms in their hands?
Read.
So he answered and said unto me, It is the Son of God, whom they have confessed in the world.
And that's what Zerubbabel did. He confessed the truth of God in the world. He let his light shine before man. He told them, look, above everything is the truth. And everyone else is wicked if they're not keeping the truth, the laws of God. Go ahead.
Then began I greatly to commend them that stood so stiffly for the name of the Lord.
Read.
Then the angel said unto me, Go thy way, and tell my people what manner of things, and how great wonders of the Lord thy God thou hast seen.
That's what we got to go do. When we read about Zerubbabel, we got to go tell people how great we've seen things happen for our forefathers. Because this is just one example of a real immortal. There's many more in the Bible. Many more in the Bible. And we can all be real immortals if we repent and keep God's commandments. So I'm going to wrap it up there. Lord's will, y'all got something out the class. Shalom, y'all. Most high in Christ bless.
What is a nation? Nation is family. Nation is community. Nation is men leading by example. Nation is women's support. Nation is children with role models.